good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I hope everyone has had a wonderful week. I am using this microphone because I woke up this morning and my husband asked me what I wanted for breakfast, and I was like, what? So, I had prayed and asked the Lord to let me have my voice until we finish this, because you know Dr. Kilcrease will make me do it again. So, you are not going to need your electronic devices, so I'm going to ask that you put them away, close them up, to include your cell phones, because I'm going to need for you to be ready when it's time for us to do our activities. So just to check, because we had some people come in the room that were supposed to be in the other room, all the faces look familiar. You're here for vocabulary. No, the devil. I'm just going to hand this off to Steve. And I promise you I was not going karaoke before y'all came. Okay? I just turned it on. It's back. Hello? Okay. It came back. It came back on. All right. So, you are here this morning for Vocabulary's Code. Just so you are aware, we are filming this. We are testing out a new system for videoing, and so that you will be able to preview or use this video when you are at your schools. So while we wait for the microphone, I'm going to go through our slides. So what we believe in Bibb County, well, I'm not even going to look at it. We believe that we are preparing our students to be what? College or career ready. And our mission tells us that we should be engaged with who? The community. And what is the attribute we should exhibit? It's vocabulary's code. Some of y'all looking at me like, did she say attribute? I did. I'm going to be throwing out a lot of SAT vocabulary today. You will be befuddled. So the attribute we should be displaying in our mission is dedication. We are dedicated to this mission. We believe in this mission. This mission is our charge. Agree or disagree? Agree. Very good. Now, stay above the line. See it, own it, solve it, do it. Now, I just want you to reflect. How many of your teachers understand be above the line? About 40, I just might say about 40%. About half. So when we see a problem, what are we supposed to do? Own it. What if that problem is not in our lane? We still own it. Because eventually that problem is going to affect what? Everybody. And so when you own that problem, you seek solutions. Correct? All right. So victory in our schools, we have an overriding goal of what? Where are my math people? Where's Susan Jones? What do we want to be in that CCRPI?
Greater than 70%.
Greater than 70 or above. So now I want you to reflect just for a few minutes. Are you aware of what you need to do in your schools to get there? I've met with several schools in the last couple of weeks, and I've been working with them in terms of social studies And I pulled up the CCRPI and I said, if we can move these kids right here, you're going to see some growth. That's the conversation that we should be having. It should be intentional. For our work today, number 2, the priority, be successful on the Georgia milestones. For me, vocabulary is like the be-all, the end-all. I am a wordsmith, and it's because of my mother. Every year for Christmas, I think since they began publishing the Word a Day calendar, I got one. And every day I was very excited to tear the page off and use my new word. I do the same thing. My oldest son rejected this gene, I'll just be honest. But my youngest son, he loves words. And I challenge him all the time. When he was 4 years old, I told him he could no longer use the word good. Because I would say, how was your day, Jonathan? Good. And wouldn't that be the end of the conversation? Yes. And I would say, describe it to me in 5 sentences or less. And so his vocabulary and his ability to have a conversation, or it could just be because he hangs out with his dad and he's around adults all the time. I don't know, the research. But vocabulary. So I want you to look at your tables. You have table 10s. And I'm going to ask you right now to read through that quote. Words are not just words. They are the nexus, the interface between communication and thought. When we read, it is through words that we build, refine, and modify our knowledge. What makes vocabulary valuable and important is not the words themselves as much as the what? Understanding. So today, as we delve into the world of vocabulary's code, I'm going to ask you to be reflective and think about what it is you see the teachers that you work with. What are they doing? Why is it that the words don't stick? So our Core 6 is embedded into our district literacy plan. And so a part of Action Step 1, we provide professional learning and resources for teachers, administrators, academic, and district coaches on the Core 6 essential strategies. And this is, if I'm correct, this is the 4th one? Yes, we've done Right to Learn, Reading for Meaning, Compare and Contrast, and now Vocabulary's Code. So, ponder this. The human brain is hardwired to learn to speak due to evolutionary processes that evolved anywhere from 1.75 million to 50,000 years ago. But the act of reading is an invention, one that is only about 6,000 years old. And every brain must be trained to utilize spoken language structures to do the work or reading. So, why? Why do we need Vocabulary's Code? Vocabulary is the foundation for improved literacy. Academic vocabulary is at the core of the Core 6. Vocabulary fuels learning. So now we're going to go.
Ask you a question. Can you go back to that slide?
Yes,
the one before that, if you don't mind. So what we found in letters is that the reason why students are struggling with reading is because we weren't created to read. And so that was really something that really stuck out to a lot of us, is that we just thought that automatically, that it should be easy to teach kids or it should be easy to read. But that's why a lot of our students are struggling. with the act of reading because it's not something that we were required or wired to do.
Right. So that's why that I underline that area in there that says you have to train the brain. Thank you for that. The research. So the next couple of slides, we're just going to be looking at the research so that I can prove to you and you'll be able to prove to your teachers why vocabulary instruction is essential. So vocabulary instruction, and so this comes from the Visible Learning for Literacy, that's Fisher, Fry, and Hattie. Vocabulary knowledge is a strong predictor of reading comprehension. The vocabulary instruction has a 0.67 effect size. So what does Hattie say is the threshold for effect size? 0.4. So anything above 0.4, now I saw some wrinkled foreheads. Y'all didn't know I was a forehead reader, did you? So I'm going to go back a little bit. Hattie is our instructional education guru. And just to tell you a little bit about Hattie, Hattie went to several different school districts, and he studied what we do. He has broken down things even as lining up children in the hallway. And I said, well, what in the world does Hattie want to measure that for? Because he says in the school day, children should be learning everywhere they go and all the time. So just lining children up wastes instructional time. So there is an effect size to that in terms of students learning. But if you line children up and you ask them, what are your continents? You know I'm going to stick with social studies today, okay? All right. So what are your continents? Can you name all the first 10 presidents? Children are constantly thinking, and they know that this is an environment that they should be using their brain. So the effect size, 0.40, is what we call the threshold. So anything above 0.40 is considered to be effective. So a strong vocabulary program has a 0.67 effect size. Too many children and adolescents experience vocabulary instruction as making passing acquaintances. So I told you today you're going to be reflective. So I want you to think about your time in elementary school. Okay? And on Monday, your teacher gave you your spelling words, correct? On Tuesday, you did 5 times each. On Wednesday, you wrote the sentences. On Thursday, my teacher made us write a story. What did your teacher tell you? ABC order. ABC order. Okay, I did that for a teacher. My son has done mathematical vocabulary where they take the letter corresponding with the number in the alphabet and then add it up. Okay? So, how helpful was that for you in retaining the meaning of the word? No. How many of your teachers still do that? I got a child. I hate that mathematical vocabulary. So, what we have to do is explain to teachers what is it that is going to get us our biggest bang for the buck. Which strategy is going to be our highest leverage? They know that many of the words won't be used again and that the next week we'll be on to a what? A new list. But what they don't think about is the milestones. When those words pop up, or the SAT, or the ACT. Anybody in here taking the LSAT? What about the MAT? I was a genius on the MAT, and I had an IEP for the SAT. My mother was like, why did I spend all that money sending you to the tutoring classes? I was like, I don't know. I only got a score for the English. The math was like ridiculous. But I'm good with words. I have a high reading level. When I took the MAT, plus I love social studies and all things history. So when I took the MAT, I was like, oh yes, the Hindenburg is to Germany as Berlin is to See that? I make a really good Jeopardy partner. But on the SAT, that word list with all those words, I'd taken Latin. I knew the prefixes, the suffixes. It didn't matter if I'd never seen that word before. I knew how to what? Take it apart. Does that make sense? So that's a transferable skill that I can take with me. And that's exactly what we want students to have. Too often, vocabulary selection is hit or miss, with some teachers identifying only the, Dr. Kilcrease, here we go. What's that word? Multi-syllabic?
Syllabic.
Syllabic. And rare words, I did practice.
Yes, she did.
Multi-syllabic.
Syllabic.
Syllabic. And rare words in reading, while others cling to a list from the past. So I worked with the teacher in November, and I was working with her on one of the units. And I said, where are your vocabulary words? And she said, the only word the kids need to know that I think is going to be foreign to them is going to be pioneer. I said, oh, okay. I said, out of all of the things about Lewis and Clark, that's the only word. Yes, I'm absolutely sure. This is the word I've been using. This is the word I define, and the kids just get it. Would you agree with her? Mm-hmm. So we opened up one of the studies weekly on Lewis and Clark, and the very first word said exploration. And I asked her, what about this word? She said, well, I don't know if I'm going to read that article. I said, well, what if a child is in your room and they read that article? Shouldn't they understand that Lewis and Clark were exploring, and what they did was an exploration? It took a lot of convincing, but by the time we finished, we had a concise, a vocabulary list tied into the content. And that's what we want teachers to do. We also do not want teachers to just choose bold-faced words, because there are other words that students may or may not know. So this really has to be what? Strategic. Why should teachers directly teach vocabulary? Vocabulary knowledge is the single most important factor in what? Reading comprehension. Direct vocabulary instruction increases student comprehension of new material as much as 12 percentile points. The language of academic vocabulary is a decisive factor in closing the achievement gap. So I put this slide in here because most of you, some of you have been to the RTI training. And we've all completed the Tier 1 focus in RTI training. Core instruction, if we get core instruction right, will that eliminate the number of kids in Tier 2 and Tier 3?
Yes.
So, there's a case study in your RTI book. It's the case of Anna Springs Elementary School. And their focus was developing students' vocabulary knowledge because the teachers realized that their students, especially those living in poverty, had significant gaps in conceptual and background knowledge. Being reflective. Does that sound like our students in Mid-County? Yes. Most of our students, I would just surmise, they come with at least a 35,000 word deficit when they enter kindergarten. SpongeBob SquarePants babysat a lot of children. The vocabulary, the repetitive vocabulary in SpongeBob SquarePants is about 1,500 words. So 1,500 words are recycled over and over and over and over again. That's not expanding the vocabulary. Does that make sense? So knowing this about their students, they focused on the expectation that students receive quality core instruction, Tier 1, as a part of their ongoing participation in school. So their focus was vocabulary knowledge. And then they implemented a high-quality instruction means that fewer and fewer students needed the extensive support offered through RTI. So all of us in our schools, we all have things that we're targeting. We're targeting literacy, reading, math, but make sure in that it's something specific that's going to increase that reading comprehension. How and which words should we teach? Just those critical to content. Those with multiple exposures through a variety of instructional strategies. When a student takes social studies, they are exposed to the largest vocabulary list. It's ongoing. You have the English words, but if you're studying Africa, will they add in some African words? Absolutely. So it's like this ongoing list. What teachers have to decide is what is critical to the content. And as I said earlier, it should be words that transfer. So you have a folder on your desk, well, tables. If you please make sure that each person gets a folder at this point. We're going to take a closer look at our tiers of vocabulary. So I provided you with an anchor chart on the tiers of vocabulary. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to look at the screen and look at that piece of paper. So we have the majority of the heads looking up. Raise your hand if you got the 10 minutes. Okay. So we have 3 tiers of vocabulary. Tier 1, vocabulary, according to the research, you shouldn't have to teach. Clock, baby, happy, walk. If your mother tells you, boy, move, have you heard the word walk? So in families that have limited vocabulary or interchange words, I taught economics, and my students couldn't read a clock. We needed to do a time sheet exercise. They couldn't read the clock. Then they told me, we don't have a clock in our house. I was like, oh goodness. We use our cell phones. So even our tier 1 words are now foreign. When I was in elementary school, I don't remember, I think it was what is that, national test we took, the Iowa test or something? Yes. I didn't know what a cupboard was. And I remember we took the test, and then I read, on that word. Why didn't I know what a cupboard was? We retired it, hadn't we? So even though it says that the Tier 1 vocabulary exists in everyday language, we can see from the few examples I've given you that some of our words have changed. My mother-in-law learned a new word last night, meme. She was like, spell that. My son was like, M-E-M-E. She was like, that's a meme. I mean, she was really trying to get that back. So we showed her what a meme was. She said, I thought those were just pictures just sending people to laugh. So now we have new everyday words, correct? So depending upon the level of students, we should be aware that there may be some what we consider Tier 1 words that they may not know. Let's take a look at Tier 2. High frequency words found in content areas. Analyze, clarify, evaluate, summarize. Raise your hand if you agree these transfer across content areas. Would it surprise you that we have students in high school, when you say analyze, they don't know what you're talking about? Why is it that they do not know what the word analyze means?
We don't spend a lot of time explicitly teaching what analyze means, how to analyze, what it looks like, an example.
Okay.
They don't have an interaction with it.
They do not have an interaction with it. What if I told you they don't know how to analyze because their teacher doesn't use that word? Because they tell them, I need you to look at it real hard. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to look over the paper. They never say the word what? Analyze. The other day I was in a class, the teacher told the kids, I need you to write me a short description. What word should she have used? Summarize. Summary or summarize. So when you're observing teachers and they're not using the content vocabulary, do you see how this can cause a deficit? And it's not a purposeful deficit, is it? No. High frequency words that are used by mature language users across several content areas. Because of their lack of redundancy in oral language, Tier 2 words present challenges to students who primarily meet them in print. Hello, Summarize. It's the first time I'm meeting you, even though I've been in school 12 years. That's terrible, isn't it? Let's take a look at Tier 3 vocabulary. Adjective, antonym, author's purpose, paraphrase. What content area is that? ELA. If you've taught ELA, your students were taught these words, correct? Now, here is the biggie. Do these transfer outside of ELA? No, they don't. Not all the time. I would not say, read the Constitution for the author's purpose. Would I? No. These are purely within the content area. Math has its own language. Science has its own language. I don't understand how many times you're going to talk to somebody about some phalanges. So these are words that students learn in the content area. I want you to think about your major. Probably most of you in here are education majors. Or you may be a math major. You might have a political science major. Think about your vocabulary in terms of the content area that you got a degree in. Some of you are working on doctorate degrees, and you're taking a whole lot of stat classes, correct? Isn't that a whole nother language? Right now I'm saying it, I'm breaking out in a sweat, okay? So when we drill down and get content specific, those are words that the students really need to know to be successful in their course. In economics, I spent the first 4 weeks changing children's minds about what words meant. Interest. Do you see where that could cause confusion?
Yes.
The only thing your interest is in econ is your money what? Growing. And the kids would tell me, I like money. I'm interested in it. How do I make some more? So in that particular area, I had to be really intentional, making sure the children connected with that vocabulary. So any questions on Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3? Critical focus for instruction. And Dr. Kilpriest, this came from letters too?
It did. It came from the letter symposium.
The letter symposium. And so in the letters training that, raise your hand if you're doing letters training so we can see you. Going to help the children in Bibb County read. Very good. Thank you. And so there are 3 categories. You have academic vocabulary, domain specific, and then high frequency. So basically you have Tier 1 is which one? High frequency. What is Tier 2? Domain specific, and then your academic is Tier 3. So I put this slide in here so that we can see that our collaborative planning sheet, that prep sheet, asks teachers to do what? Identify vocabulary. When you're compliant, you just throw some words in that box, right? When you're intentional, you are really specific. What are the reading levels of my children? What is it that I need for them to use? What is it that they're going to see on my unit assessment? And we have the same thing here in our planning sheet. What is the key vocabulary? Tier 2, academic vocabulary is language that is aimed at an intelligent audience. These are word of the day words, SAT words, and the words you might find on vocabulary assignments. Tier 3, our domain-specific vocabulary, is language or word choice that is directly related to the class for which you are writing. If you are observing a teacher and they are not using the Tier 3 vocabulary, there needs to be a conversation. If Susan Jones walked into the math class and the teacher was teaching multiplication and they said, do the little X thing. If I walked into a social studies classroom and the teacher was saying, I need y'all to look at that round thing over there with all the pretty pictures in the different colors, we're going to have a conversation because the children need to hear the academic vocabulary. And then notice here in Tier 3, related to the class for which you are what? That domain-specific vocabulary needs to show up in the student's writing. My students would not get credit if they did not use the vocabulary I was adamant about them using. You can't replace thing and them, and no. You need to be specific. Does that make sense? So, we're ready to delve into the code. Are you ready? So, before we begin, the code requires multiple experiences with the vocabulary words. Remember, we've shown in the research it's not hit or miss. It's intentional. Students, in order for them to make that word a part of their vernacular, they have to have multiple experiences with it. And it's not what we already described. Write the words in ABC order 5 times each. Look up the definition. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about genuine, personal experience. You're going to take the word out on a date. Okay? So connect is the C in the code. Students are introduced to new vocabulary, and the focus is on helping students form strong initial connections with the term. The first arrow there says a personal association. I was at a school with some teachers, and they're teaching about the explorers, and they said the kids don't understand what the word obstacle means. I said, well, how did you teach it? And they said, well, I read the definition, and then I pulled it up on the screen. I told everybody to get up, didn't I, Claudia? Took Claudia's book bag, put it in the middle of the floor, told everybody to line up. I said, what is the obstacle between you and the desk? And they said, the briefcase. I said, what is the obstacle to you being a millionaire reader? They said, I don't read. What is the obstacle for you getting everything you want on your Christmas list? I don't have enough money. Very good, children. You understand obstacle. Now sit down. Now you're going to take that personal association and then tie it to your content. The explorers had obstacles that were in their way from them meeting their goal. Does that make sense? I have seen teachers spend a week on a word. They're spending a week on a word because the word only means something to them. If you start with a personal association with students, that's the first part of that connection. Any questions? The O, organize. Students remember information better when it is clearly organized. This phase allows students to discover the relationship between terms. Graphic organizers, brief writing assignments. Those are the two examples they give you in the Course 6 book. Graphic organizers are only as good as the person who created it. If you just put some boxes and it's not intentional. I worked with a teacher yesterday. I said, what is it that you want the students to do? Their prompt should be on this graphic organizer. What was the impact? What was their focus? How do you know it was successful? And then we created a word bank that the students had to use. Any questions on organize? The D and the E. D, process. Students use thinking strategies and multiple forms of representation to develop a deep understanding. Analogies and metaphors, visual representations, writing and discussion, context clues. And I don't know why Course 6 put pictures last, but pictures have always opened the door for my lowest performers. I threw a video up there, I put a picture up. Oh, that's what you the head back. That's when I used to really feel like a super teacher. Yeah, I got them there. Okay. So pictures really help students synthesize what it is that you're talking about. E, exercise. Engaging students in meaningful review and practice activities that help them commit new terms to long-term memory. Playing games and having fun. Are y'all surprised by that? I love vocabulary bingo. You read the definition out, you read the example out, and then I have to do my part. I have to do that with my middle school kids. Now you can do a Jeopardy game. Alex, I'll take 300. Where's that end in the LY? Okay. So any type of game to engage students. But remember I told you when we started with the code, it's about multiple personal experiences. So are you ready to practice?
Yes.
Y'all don't sound excited.
Yes.
All right. We're getting ready to what?
Practice.
Ladies and gentlemen, a special announcement coming directly to you today from the Department of Language and Literacy and Services, now known to you as DOLLS. Breaking news. We have received urgent an urgent notice from the Vocabulary Division, the Department of Language and Literacy Services, informing us of a recent development in the vocabulary world. It will affect every writer, every reader, and every educator in America due to the overuse, misuse, and downright abuse of words by writers with rudimentary vocabularies. Words are requesting furloughs, taking sabbaticals, and retiring in record numbers. Many words have simply gone MIA. In response to this crisis, Dawes has implemented an early retirement program. This voluntary program allows words that have been consistently and egregiously overused to submit a request for immediate removal from the English language without penalty. In other words, full benefits. After much negotiation, Dawes has obtained permission for many of the overtaxed words to share with you a small portion of their struggles. On your table is an envelope. Each table has the resignation letter of a word. Please take a moment to read the resignation letter of our dearly retired word.
Was our word good, bad?
Read it aloud to your table.
Development Language and Literacy Services, Vocabulary Division, request for retirement, word, life.
We've been confined to confused after a long career of consternation. We recommended early retirement. Confused was baffled. Why him? Is he the only adjective effective? Friend and fellow adjective perplexed could not shed any light on why confused was so confused. After all, perplexed felt that she was perfectly suitable. Was a perfectly suitable adjective. Confused became delusional. He believes that other adjectives were against him in an attempt to calm his down. Senators were confused, held an intervention. Although convinced the intervention was a plot to oust him from vocabulary, confused accepted the offer of retirement without penalty. His parting words were, "I'm still more confused than a chameleon in a bag of skittles."
Like a here and there, like right on right, like it or like see no end in sight. Late one night, while contemplating his future, it came to him like a bolt from the blue. He could make light a new and be. Light was last day driving southbound on I-95 in an SUV like hybrid truck. Word on the street that Light was driving that truck Light stole.
All right, give me a thumbs up if you've completed your letter. Okay, great. So also in your folder, now that you have met your word, would you agree at your tables, just decide, does this word need to be retired? Yes. So what I'm going to quickly do is we're just going to go around the room and just one person just tell me what their word is, please. What was your word? Man.
Nice.
Nice.
Looked.
Looked.
Sad.
Sad.
Good.
Good. Bye-bye, good.
Happy.
Happy. See you later.
Like.
Like.
Bad.
Bad. And this table is mad because bad is a he.
Very.
Very and
Confused.
confused. All right. So in your folder, you have a matrix. pull your matrix out. And we're going to work our way through the code. So on your matrix, if you would, circle associations under C for connect. Under the O, fist, list, and word spiders. D, visualizing vocabulary, deep processing. E, engage. You're going to circle 2, use it or lose it, and 3's a crowd. Thumbs up? Great. So you have a blank sheet of paper in your folder. And as I used to tell my students, this is the only sheet of paper that you're going to get. So if you write one letter on it and you decide to ball it up, it's between you and the Lord. Okay. All right. So we're going to do the C. What is your word? Keep in mind what your word is. You can do this, I think, maybe 3-4 minutes. So association says you will generate words, pictures, feelings, physical reactions to your words or whatever else comes to mind. Do that now. You're using your retired word. I just read the directions. Oh, okay. Students generate words, pictures, feelings, physical reactions to words, or whatever else comes to mind. So when the teacher wants to start the code, they're going to give students a word. Remember, this is the personal connection. So if a teacher allows a student to see the word and then begin to do this activity to see what they think it means, without telling them what it means, they're kind of formatively assessing what the child may or may not know. Then it allows for the teacher to just do clarification and then go through the rest of the code for deeper processing. Now, if you're done, I need you to take out your phones. So essentially, I'm looking around the room. Some of you all wrote synonyms of the word. Yes? Mm-hmm. So what I want you to do is to look up your word in the Google box and see all the other words you could be using. And I want you individually to choose, now listen carefully, a word you think the people at your table will not know. And keep that word a secret. thumbs up if you need more time. And we'll give you about 30 more seconds. Just need one word you think your counterparts may not know. So keep in mind, you're at a table. Y'all all might be looking at the same Google list. Okay, so very quickly, I'm going to give you 1 minute to go around your table and share your word.
You must have a different list. What's that? What's the word? I had that. It's always a book you probably read.
Hugger Mugger. That's what I chose.
Okay.
Hugger Mugger.
That's hilarious.
I got my beer with kids.
I had the same that Susan had, but I had another one. I've never heard of
That's what it is.
30 seconds.
I had never heard of that.
So if your table is done, I want you to choose the best new synonym. Who had the best new synonym?
I said it again. Say it again. Okay.
All right, let's come back together. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to choose the best synonym. Once you have chosen that person, I need them to come and stand by me. Bring your word. If you don't know how to spell it, bring your phone.
You got the best one?
All right, come on.
Analogous. Oh, I know.
Okay, so these are our she's sauntering. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, these are our 2019 finalists for the new word, a word we will interject into our vernacular so that we can strengthen our vocabulary. So I'm going to allow the new word to tell us the word they're replacing and what the new word is. Let's give them a round of applause.
All right, replacing the word mad, we are going with Meshuggah. Yes, Meshuggah.
Meshuggah. Mad.
Replacing the word nice, we're going with the word eerie, I-R-I-E. Replacing the word happy, we are going with cockahoo.
Replacing the word very, we're going with unco, U-N-C-O.
Replacing the word confused, we're going with higgledy piggledy. The word is spelled H-I-G-G-L-E-D-Y / or dash, P-I-G-G-L-E-D-Y. Higgledy piggledy.
Replacing the word like with analogous. A-N-A-L-O-G-O-U-S.
Replacing the word bad, we're going to be using diddly. D-I-D-D-L-Y. Replacing the word looked, we're going to use descry, like take a descry.
Replacing the word sad, we're going with lugubrious.
Replacing the word good, we're going with meritorious.
Let's give them a round of applause. And as our new words return to their seat, they will be charged with jumping into the mouths of humans. That's the only thing I could come up with. All right, so now, I want you to reflect. Do you know the word? You know cock-a-hoop. Now, if this was an activity in the classroom and you had 20, 25 students, two things would occur. They would know, one, we're replacing this word, and look at all the other words I can use. I want you to look at your sheet of paper. Some of you gave your words emotional connections. If a child makes an emotional connection to the vocabulary, it's here. And it's here. They're 5 times more likely to use the word. In 3rd grade, I was in the spelling bee. It was me and Lisa Dare. She got the word camel. I got the word uppity. I immediately called Johnny Cochran. Because there was something amiss. My mother, till this day, swore I was going to be a lawyer because I was like, that was not fair. It was not on the list. I know what uppity means. I have used it on several people since 3rd grade, including a teacher, and that resulted in the loss of recess. So the emotional attachment to that word, and that's what we want our students to do. Are you ready for the O? Yes. Okay, so let's take a look at the description. Fist, list, and word spiders. The teacher provides the category in the palm of a hand organizer, and students generate 5 words that fit the category, 1 for each finger or the organizer. Same thing works with a spider. Same thing works with a word web. So I want you to take your new words you found, and I want you to write 5 new words or 5 phrases that explain what your word means. But you can't use the what? Retired word. I want you to give me 5 new words. See, I'm holding up my fist list. And I need, so you put your new word in the middle. And I need 5 new words. Do not use the retired word. Okay, so those of you that are using a spider, the science people in the room told me that I have cut off some legs, so you can do 6. Okay, there we go.
You said hugger mugger.
Yes, ma'am.
Hugger mugger.
Not to be confused with hugging your mother.
Hey, spell it again.
Hugger
Gigi, sorry.
dash MUGGU.
I heard Siri defining a word that brings all of the people who work in dolls joy. Yes, it brings us joy. Ooh, okay, here we go. The Google box will tell you the word. The Google box will tell you how to pronounce it. Oh, Siri has just informed someone what they have found. All right, so you have about 30 seconds. So some of you are finished. To end this activity, you have your word on your phone. I want you, and I hope you put it in the Google box now. Don't put it in the Bing box or the Safari box. It has to be in the Google box because I want you to hit images. Once you have an image, I want you to share your image with your elbow partner.
What's your word? So why is it giving you colors? I know. That's what this one does. It does. Why did it? That's crazy. Analogous colors, that's why.
So I guess that's why this
similar
came
color,
up.
like complementary colors.
Yeah, I guess that's why.
And what was your word like?
I
So it's complementary, so that's why.
So yeah, that's what it is.
Now this was a trick exercise because some of the words don't match the images, do they?
No.
I know. I got somebody over here looking at chickens. Somebody over here in Jamaica because it's Ivory Man, okay?
Yeah, I was thinking about it.
That's not working out. So, guess what? When a teacher wants to connect a word with an image, there has to be some what? Pre-planning, right? Let's don't go up there and click the Google box. You never know what you're going to get. Does everybody see that? So when they're in collaborative planning, they're going to have to be strategic if they're going to use an image. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you so much for that. All right, everybody have their fist lister spider done?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going on to the D. Are we ready? Visual vocabulary. So it says students create images, sketches, or icons with brief explanations to demonstrate understanding. So what I'm going to ask you to do as a collective group, at this point, choose a scribe, voluntold or volunteered. So at your table, choose a scribe. Who's going to draw?
Nose goes.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Have we all played Pictionary? Yes. We have all played the Pictionary. And have we all had a good time laughing in the Pictionary? Yes. I will never forget the phrase was parking lot, and we kept yelling out, comb, comb. It's not a parking lot. She just drew the last. Big cone, little cone. Okay. So, I'm going to give you 1 minute as a collective group, because everybody's forgotten your word, and somebody gave me a face. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to draw a picture of your word. Begin.
What about this? Hands like this?
Like a son and his father might be analogous.
Too cute.
Similar. That was the example they gave on the
You're doing such a great job.
Now I'm going to give some of y'all a hint. Even though your word is retired, the meaning didn't change. Because some of y'all are going literal to the new word.
Oh, okay.
You can still hang on the meaning of the old word.
Yeah. Good job. Great. I didn't, when you put that thing up there, I didn't know this. You're a mean one. Mr. Rich. Cute.
Seconds.
It's like right. When I wrote down all my words with right, it was 2 or 3 different meanings. So it would be like when you were saying right, because you can compare.
All right, time to finish up. You have 30 seconds. Okay, I need the scribes to stand in the middle aisle at the end of the tables.
Good job, Susan.
And so the back tables will face the front tables. So right where you are, Susan. So each table should have someone up. So, where's the scribe? Come on, let's go. Okay, so Mr. Veal and Ms. Boynton, you're going to face each other. All right, reveal yours, Ms. Boynton. Mr. Veal, what's your guess? He said he doesn't know. So the point of this exercise is to show you we have not had enough experiences with our words. Does Mr. Veal know our word? No. Oh, you said looked? It just took a long time. Oh, he was stuck on the magnifying glass. All right, next team, come on. Thank you so much. What did she say? Sad. Sad, okay. All right. Did y'all switch? Okay, good. Switch. So we're going to go over here and just keep going. What is y'all trying to get ready for Guggenheim? Come on. Yes, waiting on you. Which way should we I did the word list and I don't know what to do. It looks like a picture with a ribbon at the science fair.
Okay, so they did it.
Okay, so what is the word? Good. Good.
It means very good.
Yes. All right. Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Thumbs up. All right. I don't know.
I'll think about Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Y'all done?
Yeah, we got.
Okay.
He's actually thought about on those.
Thumbs up.
Which are all bears that mean
Very.
That was a very big thumb. No. I'm so sorry. That was lost in scribation. Okay. All right, so we have one more letter in the code, and you get to choose which one you want to do individually. You have use it or lose it. Students use a specified number of new words in their writing assignment, and so the teacher would combine a group of words, maybe in a word box, and the students write about it. This activity is very good because children think when they have to write that it can't be nonsense. Like when they're doing narratives, you're making up a story, correct? But children are stymied because they go, but that didn't happen in real life. So putting together some words that have no relationship and giving them the freedom to just free write and connect the cock-a-hoop together will make them very cock-a-hoopy, right? Okay? So that's that assignment. Or three's a crowd, taking words in groups, and children have to pick out the word that does not belong. Does that make sense? All right. Give yourself a round of applause. You have finished the code. So you will, when we send out the PowerPoint, you will receive the infographic along with the matrix. I'm going to encourage you to make sure that your teachers are focusing on which tier of vocabulary. Which tier?
2, 3.
Tier 3. Tier 3. Those are the words we know they don't know. Any other words in tier 1 or 2 are added because we discover they don't know. Yes, sir. Yeah.
How long would you envision a teacher should spend to do the
Well, in terms of social studies, they could do it throughout a unit because you want multiple experiences.
At any one time, like if we go into observe a teacher, should they spend 20 minutes doing this? Should they spend?
I would, okay, and that's why I tried to keep what I did today in less than 5 minutes, because it could make a great activator. It could be a part maybe of the work session, part of the mini lesson, but it shouldn't take the entire class. A teacher should not also focus on no more than 1 to 3 words. Maybe high school, 3 to 5. Because remember, the purpose of the code is to make the what? Connection. So for some students, it could be too much. Does that make sense? Answer your question? All right. Now, this is your planning consideration. So thank you so much. Oh, that's right. This was one of my 2019 synonyms. Mashuda. All right? So planning considerations, and I've been talking about this the whole time. What are the essential terms students need to learn? That's your tier 3. Tier 2 can be in there too, because we said they don't know what analyze, summarize, and all that means. So making sure they're intentional in coding that is fine. And then how will I move students through the phases of the code? And that was your question. So the activities do not have to be very long. They can be short. Even think about it. If you have students look up a word after you have previewed the images and then say, look it up on your phone, now hit the images. What do you think this word means? Does that kind of make sense? So here are some examples of the way your teachers can take care of the code. Besides the matrix that I gave you, a word wall. But I need to draw your attention to this word wall. Remember, the code says for deeper processing that it needs to be what? Organized. This is not how my word wall looked in middle school. Okay, it was just, this month is going to be orange words on the cardboard. So we need for it to be organized. I know that Weaver Middle School had an initiative this year. All the classrooms had to have word walls. And word walls should change, especially in science, social studies, and Susan, math. Okay. Because with each new unit, we have new words. Does that kind of make sense? Allow students to create the classroom word wall using the strategy below. Identifying words they do not recognize creates a connection from the beginning. So it gives them the list, how to group it, how to label it. That is doing a code. Does that make sense? Any questions? So this is my example. When I went to ASCD to do the Core 6 training, some of you may remember in middle school, I gave the teachers a list, unorganized, uncategorized. I was sitting in the training and I said, ooh, I'm violating the code. So I took the list of themes for Unit 1 in the vocabulary and organized it for the teachers this year. And so many of them were like, oh my goodness, I was trying to just teach 1 through 10, and then I was teaching 6 through, does that kind of make sense? Now they have something to reference and something to build upon because it's organized. And then I encourage them within this category to further let the students organize and make connection. Multiple opportunities to connect. Remember the code. This activity allows students to go beyond the definition of the word while using the complete code. So to piggyback on Mr. Thompson, you introduce the word, right? And then the first connection is the picture. Then you could come back for deeper understanding and do synonym, antonym, right? And then in my own words, deep processing. And then a sentence, the engage would be create that sentence and share it with your partner. So that's an easy way to do that. where it does not take a long time. Because the one thing we don't want teachers to do is to all their focus transfer into doing the code and the content is left on the side of the road. Okay? Here's a Freyer model. This technique requires students to define the target vocabulary and apply their knowledge by generating examples, non-examples, giving characteristics, and or drawing a picture to illustrate the meaning of the word. And again, remember the code. Here's a vocabulary self-assessment. I found this on in the internet, but an ELA teacher used this. She gave the students the list of words that she thought, and then she had them do a self-assessment. And so this begins the code. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go through the content areas because some of you are going to return to your schools and the teachers are going to ask, does the code belong in math? So I do want to clarify that and remind you that Asia and Susan are in the room. So please do not ask me to do any math. So math numeracy, number talks, and Sherry Nix, our STEM coordinator, has added STEM to this slide. It takes a numeracy-rich environment for authentic vocabulary learning, and I've given you the page, so you can send your math teachers to the page, or copy the page for them. The power of numeracy lies in the empowerment of students, that is, students are given opportunities to use academic vocabulary in a natural setting and to recognize and appreciate how that term relates to the world both inside and outside the math classroom. And Ms. Nix told me to tell you, in the STEM environment. So understanding math language gives students the proficiency they need to mull around in the math a bit, integrate old knowledge with newly learned vocabulary, and apply that learned knowledge in new situations. And here's a quote from our coordinator. This is a great opportunity for teachers to help students connect their words to the math vocabulary. Students should be explicit in helping students move beyond vague references to specific articulation of the math vocabulary. And that also goes with the math teacher too. Questions? Science and STEM. All of our science classes in the STEM scopes, Mr. Butler says, they have engage and explore before they are introduced to the what? Vocabulary. That's that connection. He says that C with connect is them seeing the experiment, the phenomenon beforehand. Mrs. Nix says that engage and explore comes before. Okay? Vocabulary is introduced after students have witnessed the phenomenon during the explain. All of the techniques we have talked about are useful in the science classroom, and I gave you the pages for the science teachers. Social studies. Everything we did today works in the social studies classroom. Everything. Okay? Remember, in social studies, we're going beyond regurgitation of facts. What do I want my students to know and or be able to do with this vocabulary term or concept? And this is extremely important. I work with social studies teachers a lot, and they go right into, I need them to know this, I need them to know this, and I need them to know this. We need them to decide what the students are supposed to what? Do. When you go into observe, it's what the students are what? Doing. All of the, okay, I said that, I'm sorry. Write down one, and I gave some examples. Write down one new thing you learned today and use at least 2 of our vocabulary wall words. Write down the words blank, blank, and blank from our vocabulary wall. With a partner, write down everything you think you know about them. From our word wall, select 5 words and write a description using each word to explain the topic. Give your description a heading. And so that goes with that organization in the O. Vocabulary journals. Allows for opportunities to practice social studies language. Students can revisit and add their entries as they as their understanding develops. And so Ms. Denard said, and I quote, writing is 47% of the text. She wanted me to put that on that slide, so I told her I would say that. So the students must write, and in order for them to have a voluminous writing sample, they must have rich words. None of the ones we have retired. And so Write to Learn, writing across all content areas. Almost any writing assignment is an opportunity for students to use new vocabulary terms in a meaningful way. Students should be required to use content vocabulary in their writing assignments. Today you will write about what you have. You must use all 7 vocabulary terms on our word wall. And so, with that being said, if we complete the code, reading comprehension will do what? Increase. I love y'all. Thank you so much for your time, your attention, for joining me this afternoon. And remember the code. Thank you so much.